Welcome back, everybody. Pounding through these episodes of what we think about 8th edition and what we know currently and speculations. Once again, I'm Brad, joined by the one and only Gavin and Jared. That's the one and the only. So we're starting off right here with the overall just fundamentals of morale and everything like that. So Jared, why don't you give us the rundown on what's changing with morale versus what we're seeing currently and what we can expect to see, I guess.
So we can infer from the article that they gave that, and it's also been pretty apparent that they've used Age of Sigmar as the beta test for 40k. And it becomes blatantly obvious with how they're changing leadership and morale in general. And to state as in the current environment, the leadership was always had a problem of being really effective against certain armies, or just not at all.
Or just nothing happened.
It was just completely ignored. And it was always a 2d6 beat, always try to match or lower.
In fact, it was so polarized in that fashion that there are some games I played with my Tyranids, just in our gaming group, playing against armies that didn't care about fear tests at all. When I play armies that do have to deal with them, I often forget to make people take fear tests just because I'm so used to playing armies that never deal with it.
So fear tests, fearless, things like that. Like, what are your thoughts? Is that all going to be going out the window then? Are we going to see anything else like coming in? Like, what do you think about that?
So all that is likely gone, but what we're going to see instead, most likely, are kind of buffs, debuff systems that add to the current, like the leadership of unit. So we'll see things like fear tests doing like -1 to a leadership or something like that, but this will all have a much more effective overall, because the new method is much more like the Age of Sigmar.
Yes, which is this, in Age of Sigmar there was a Bravery system. Okay. And it's a one-to-one behavior. So the way I'm going to explain this, it's going to happen in 40k, where, and it happens at the end of the player turn, where you address any units that lost any models.
So that's shooting and combat.
Yeah, shooting and combat. So everything that happened all through the turn, just blood and guts, killing, things dying and right and left. So you have to take a tally on that in the morale phase. I guess it's going to be like a sub phase at the end of the turn. And so you address these units and you basically take the amount of models that were slain that turn and you roll a d6. And you take that d6 value and you add it to that amount of models slain and you compare it to that with the unit's leadership value. And the difference between those two values, additional models flee off the board.
Okay, so 2 quick examples. Let's say leadership 7, you lost 2 models, you roll a 6.
Mm-hmm. So in that case, you roll a 6, that becomes 8. So 1 additional model at the end of the turn would run. Okay. And as we talked about earlier, they've cited examples of modifying those leaderships. And I expect that there will be units that can confer like immunity to these morale tests.
Okay.
Or even more modifiers. They talked about later about in the Astra Militarum focus, commissars having a beneficial ability, like AoE beneficial ability to troop units. So maybe that's a +2.
Or he just ices one and nobody
like
else runs.
Automatically take you, no matter what, you lose one dude, and then no one else can die. Either way, it adds some real fun. We're gonna see models behaving a lot more the way they're kind of built up to be in the stories, and just how you'd kind of imagine a force fighting in such a weird setting to behave.
And it starts to make sense because I think the examples that they brought up thematically is that individual models lose nerve and run, or somebody else takes the hit on carrying off the injured, or something like that along those lines.
So now, do you think those modifiers and everything, are they going to mainly come from like the independent characters, or could a squad of troops potentially have that as like a special rule or modifier?
We'll probably see a mixture of both. There's going to be things like, with fear being something that now could potentially be useful, we may see things like, Carnifex having just, when it charges a unit, they have -1 for the rest of the turn.
Oh, and that's the other thing. Shadows of the Warp might if it's still leadership based, it could say that, you know, when you take your morale test, you suffer -1.
Yeah, it's
to your
act as if
leadership.
you took 1 or 2 more casualties than you did when you're calculating it out. Just things like that. So, you know, maybe getting charged by a giant insect the size of a school bus is having a draining effect on your morale. And we're going to see hopefully see some fun stuff like that coming out of this.
Cool. So since you guys love everything with Age of Sigmar and what they're doing, obviously this is a good thing.
Yes.
You know, we're on this kind of train of everything they're doing is good. Is there any reasons it's not good?
The way it's not good, it's really hard to see. We'll have to see as they start rolling out more rules of things that could exploit or abuse morale tests.
Okay.
Especially with modifiers. We don't know how much
Yes.
they can stack, if they stack at all, things like that. We may see some things that might stack wholly beneficial to one army. And, you know, that could be a problem. But
Or in another example, like a recent army that came out in Age of Sigmar has an item that forces a unit to take a battle shock test on twice. So they just take one immediately, and then you have to take it again at the end of the phase. So we don't know if that's going to be introduced in 40k. I wouldn't be surprised. So I guess just prepare and expect for that, and start working synergies in your own list to really make your army brave and resilient against the...
I think 7th edition lists are going to take some serious tweaking, because a lot of lists that we're taking for granted, where we just ignored leadership and things like that isn't going to be the case. And maybe a list that's built in 8th edition that takes it full advantage of how morale works in 8th will start to see extra casualties at the end of morale. Like, oh, I only lost 2-3 models, I'm still at full fighting phase. And then, you know, a few modifiers later in a bad roll, and all of a sudden your whole unit's gone.
Or in armies that are completely geared towards it, like maybe Night Lords will have this whole thing of just scaring you off the board. So that'll be pretty scary thing to deal with.
All right, so that about wraps it up then for morale. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe, comment below, let us know your thoughts and your speculations and what you think the positives and negatives are coming out in 8th edition. And make sure to tune in for the next content we'll be releasing.